Hi, everyone. My name is Emily, and I'm a programmer at the Erlanger branch of the Kenton County Public Library. And welcome to our Monday how-to sessions that we do every Monday at 4 p.m. for adults. We also have some on Wednesday evenings at 4 p.m. for kids and families. In August, we're doing all of the really cool Facebook stuff that we've been doing, but we're adding a few more things. So go ahead and go to kentonlibrary.org/events to see everything that we're offering in August. A few that I'm super excited about is the Check Bed Sing-Along that is on Friday, August 7th at 6 p.m. That's actually at the Erlanger branch in the parking lot. We're going to be practicing all the social distancing guidelines to keep everybody safe. So if you're interested, that does require registration, and there is a Facebook page or Facebook event right here on our page you can check out. We are also doing a virtual adoption event with cats at Ohio Alley Cat Resource on August 8th at 1 p.m. So check that out August 8th, 1 p.m. on Facebook Live. Today we have a presenter teaching you how to do tinctures, and it is Carissa from 7th Street Gifts. We've had a few technical difficulties, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Carissa. Hopefully everything works out. If not, we'll just end the session and try again. So go ahead and comment for me once I switch it over to Carissa and make sure that you can see her and hear her. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over.
Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us virtually, and thank you to the Kenton County Erlanger Branch Library and certainly Emily for having 7th Street Gifts lead this event. So first, I'll introduce myself. My name is Carissa Hund-Bunton, and I'm from a small family-owned and operated brick-and-mortar apothecary shop, and that's where we are today in our middle room in our workshop. We established our business in 1999. So this is our 20th year in business, and we carry a whole line of essential oils and botanicals that are food grade for aromatherapy and medicine making. And so what we're going to talk about mostly today is medicine making, and we're going to talk about how to make your very own folk medicine or tincture, okay? So first, we're just going to define a tincture because there's a lot of confusion out there, and it's super easy to kind of jumble tinctures up with other things. So right now, we're just going to talk about what makes a tincture, and then we'll kind of expand on the other things that are easily confused. So a tincture is a medicinal herbal medicine that uses a pure grain alcohol of at least an 80 proof. So the fact that it's carried or held in an 80 proof or higher alcohol as the solvent for the medicine is what makes a tincture a tincture. So a tincture is a botanical that's carried for its medicinal properties. They could be immune boosting, pain killing, adaptogenic, and the alcohol acts as its preservative and its carrier. And the really, really important thing to know about tinctures is that it has to be at least an 80 proof alcohol. I generally use a vodka. You can use an inexpensive Barton's out of like Louisville or Frankfurt that's like $8 for a little bottle. Or if you want to make a really high-end tincture or you have gluten sensitivity, you could invest in like a Tito's or a Pure Grain, something like that. But it has to be at least a proof of 80. So that's like super important. So again, a tincture is a medicinal herbal medicine that uses a pure grain alcohol with at least a proof of 80, no lower, as a solvent to extract the plant's properties. And the idea behind it is that it's ingestible. So that means that you put it into your body. You take it as a medicine, just as if you would like a cough syrup or a Tylenol or an ibuprofen. And the other reason that we use alcohol as its base or carrier, besides the fact that it makes an incredible solvent to extract and pull out the medicinal properties of your botanical, is because when you use an 80 proof or higher, it gives your medicine an extended shelf life, which is just a very, very fancy way of saying it's not going to go bad. If anything with your tincture, if you don't get to it for a year or two because it just got pushed to the back, you might have some evaporation where your alcohol evaporated a little bit, but it should be completely shelf stable and last for really an indefinite period of time. Now, that being said, the only way you can get a really long, extended to an indefinite shelf life is when you use bone dry botanical matter. All right. So let me show you. I picked some plantain today, and I bet everybody has this growing in their cracks, driveway, or anywhere, right? Plantain. It's a really common medicinal herb. You can ingest it for its high mineral content and antihistamine, or you can use it as a poultice for like poison ivy or mosquito bites. So this is a freshly picked botanical, right? As lovely as it is and as cool as it would be to just chop it up and add it and make my tincture with this freshly picked botanical, it's a romantic idea, but it's highly impractical. Because if you don't use a bone dry botanical that's got all the water out of it, you introduce the water content of the botanical, and it's a potential contaminant, which is just a way to say that it could foster mold or bacteria or an unwanted something that you're going to put into your body. So when I make a plantain tincture bulb, I pick it first, right? And then we dry it. And at the end, if you have questions on drying techniques, ask me and we'll talk more about it. But to tincture it, I'm going to use this, and I mean bone dry, right? See the difference? And it crumbles and cracks, and you don't want a drop or a drip of water left in that tincture botanical. And as long as you've got a bone dry botanical, not this, but this, you have an indefinite and extended shelf life for your medicine, which means it's not going to go bad. Now, if you want to use a fresh one just because time isn't on your side, you're in a hurry, you just want to try it, you may do so. I'm all for free will, but that would eliminate the potential extended shelf life and potentially could contaminate or put a little germ in there. So it's up to you. It's your medicine. But what we sell and what I am an advocate for is bone dry botanical. Okay. So we want a bone dry herb, root, flower, any plant matter at all, obviously that has medicinal properties and not anything to be worried about. And we're 110% in plant identification before we tincture. Then we need a clean, I lost my screen, sweetie. Lost my screen. Right. Sorry about that, we're working. Okay, great. Sorry about that. So we need a clean, sterilized glass jar or bottle. And while you're making your tincture, in the in-between time when it's called a menstruum, like a holding cycle, you use clear glass, okay? Because you're going to harness the sun and the light to make your medicine faster. So when you're beginning your tincture making, you use a clean, dry, bone dry, sterilized jar. And so this doesn't even mean like washing it really well in hot soapy water or anything, because it's super easy to even have like a little drop of water in these lids here. And so again, even a little speck of water is a contaminant. So we just want dry, 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 dry. Now what's really cool about folk medicine, which tincture is a folk medicine, is you can use any sort of quantity, variety, or blend that you want. So the proportions and the recipes and the amounts are pretty flexible, and that's kind of liberating, right? So there's not a lot of pressure. So I'm going to use this bone dry plantain that we already dried, and I'm going to fill up our clean, clear, sterilized glass canning jar. And now you can do it ahead of time in your mortar and pestle and then introduce it. I tend to just like to keep it all in here to cut down on the dishes. After you've got your bone dry botanical in your clear glass bone dry sterilized jar, you're going to use a mortar and pestle, or if you haven't got one, it can just be a butter knife or a spoon. It can be very primitive. It doesn't have to be a fancy kitchen tool. And what we're going to do here is we're going to lacerate and bruise these dry botanical matters just so that alcohol can get in there a little bit easier and pull out that wonderful medicine and those minerals and vitamins. And so it's just a laceration or a bruise. And again, if you wanted to see it, Well, I've got dandelion root in there. I want to see dandelion root, guys. We all have this growing right in our yard and our cracks. So we've got it really lacerated and bruised. I can even smell it. And like aromatic things like roses or lavender, you'll smell the fragrance release and you'll know that you're doing a good job beating that up for that tincture medicine time. Okay, so we started with a bone dry botanical, at least an 80 proof alcohol, a clean bone dry sterilized canning jar, a mortar and pestle or something similar to bruise or lacerate the botanical surface. And now we're going to add our alcohol. Now, by true definition, you would never have a barrier while you're tincture making between your botanicals and the alcohol. So a barrier would be something like a bag or a tea bag or a coffee filter, where we put the botanical in and then we submerge it and put it into our tincture jar. But by true definition, and for really folk medicine and remedy and to follow the old ancient ways, you want your botanical matter to freely mix in there and not have a barrier or anything in between. Here's the other thing. You want this filled to the brim. You don't want any bit of air to be exposed to your botanical matter. Air and water, when you're tincture making only, not in any other time, are kind of like your enemies, right? So you want no air and no water. You just want your bone dry botanical, your clear, super clean dry jar, and then your 80 proof filled to the brimmy brim brim. Okay. So how simple is that? This is a tincture in waiting, which is a menstruum. So before it becomes a tincture, when it's in its holding phase, it's a menstruum. Then you want to set this in a sunny window and turn it daily. Tinctures do not thrive on neglect. Not many things do, right? And so to turn it and move it around daily. And then it'll be pretty common, especially a really thirsty dry botanical like this, to absorb and start to soak up that alcohol. So it wouldn't be any big deal for you to come back the next day and see your tincture really low, right? Kind of like this one that I did the other day. And so you wouldn't want it that low. You would want to top it. You would want to be sure that it was topped and filled to the brim. So this would be a no-go for your tincture because see all the air there, right? This is a yes because we've got it filled to the brim. And then, oh, it's already absorbed just from that couple of minutes. You keep this topped. So your job is after you introduce your botanical to your 80 proof vodka and lacerate it and make your menstruum, is to turn it daily and top it daily. So you want to give it at least a daily turn and shake. And always check to be sure we've got these babies filled to the brim because you don't want any air to get in there at all. And it's pretty cool and it's empowering because you can see the medicine making start to happen. You'll watch the colors change. You'll see your botanicals swell up and you can kind of tell all the goodness is being taken out of them and put into the base. So you watch it as it happens. So one more time, what to do to prepare your tincture. In a mortar or pestle, we're going to bruise and open up our botanical, and this allows the plant's properties to be more easily infused into our solvent, which in this case is alcohol. You place your botanical to be freely in your glass container, and remember, it's clear glass while we're making. You want no plant matter to be exposed to air. Everything needs to be completely immersed. Measurements and quantities can vary. A loose rule is 2 parts of alcohol to 1 part plant matter, but you have total freedom with folk medicine and tincture making to use any quantity that you like. And now during the menstruum, we're going to allow to steep or sit for 2 to 4 weeks. Most tinctures are 4 weeks, but some you can see and you're anxious to try and you can tell that the medicine's getting strong. You can use them as early as 2 weeks, but traditionally you wait a month, a whole moon cycle, right? So from one moon to the next moon. And again, in the holding stage, we have a menstruum, and then when it's done, we have a tincture. Now let's fast forward to a month, and this is set in my sunny kitchen window, and I've topped it daily with an 80 proof, and I've kept it in this nice clear glass so it could soak up all the sun's magical properties, right, and help that medicine make. And now we're at week 4, and I'm ready to bottle this medicine, okay? So remember how I talked about to be a traditionalist and a purist in true folk medicine making, you would never introduce your botanical in a barrier, right? Like a bag or a coffee filter or something like that. You would always let it go freely and loosely in with the mixture, your solvent, your alcohol. So to kind of do a little hack, so you're not spending all your time straining with a funnel and using a cheesecloth and it's dripping and it's spilling in your bottle, this is a fun little tip I like to do. And if you don't have a muslin bag like we have here, it's okay. You can also do this by just taking like a paper towel and putting it over or wrapping it, or a coffee filter, okay? And then if you don't have a pipette, because it's kind of a fancy tool or maybe not something that everybody has laying around, you can use a straw, a plastic straw from like McDonald's or whatever, and you put your finger at one end of the straw and draw it in, and then when you want to release it, you let your finger off and it drops, and it's like a homemade kind of like hack for a pipette. So what I'm going to do is use my pipette and muslin bag, since I have all this stuff because I do this for a living, and we're going to pretend that 4 months has happened, right? Or 4 weeks, I'm sorry, has happened. And so the first thing we're going to do is squeeze our bulb if you have a pipette, or this is where you would put your finger at the end of your straw. And I'm going to go inside the bag or inside the paper towel or inside the coffee filter. And then I'm going to release that and pull it out. And the hack is then you get to be true to the folk tradition and make medicine the way that the wise ones have wanted us to do and taught. But you're not spending all afternoon straining and getting all this weird, funky, floating botanical matter in your tincture. So remember how we talked about we use a clear jar to harness the sun's properties and to watch it, right? To be sure our evaporation isn't getting away from us, to enjoy the magic of the medicine making, to watch the infusion happen. But once the tincture's a tincture and it's no longer a menstruum, that's when our amber glass or cobalt or any UVAB glass, food grade glass, comes in handy. This adds to the extended shelf life, right? Because now we don't want the sun to get to it any longer. The deed has been done. So we're going to filter it out to keep it really nice and fresh and long lasting. This is a 1/2 ounce bottle or a 15 ml. And you can see how much medicine I'm getting from just a teeny little 4 ounce canning jar here. Okay. And it seems too good and easy to be true, but it is. So here's your tincture. So let's go over again real super quick. We're going to use a bone-dry botanical, and the reason we follow this rule is to ensure an extended shelf life and not have any concerns about a potential contaminant. Clean, sterilized surface and clear jar to make. A pure grain alcohol of at least 80. A mortar and pestle or something similar to bruise and lacerate botanical. A cheesecloth strainer or coffee filter, organic muslin drawstring bag to filter at the end, a funnel, a dropper, pipette, or a kitchen straw, and then a month, right? And so if you don't have herbs and botanicals lying around or you don't know where to get them, I bet you everybody has a dandelion growing in their yard. I bet you everybody's got plantain growing in their yard. I bet everybody's got nettle growing in the wet spot of their yard. And you could pick this and dry it and make your own medicine in a week's time. And now the roots are really gnarly, like this dandelion root. And that's a really good tincture. Anything that's hard and rooty like that, that alcohol really does a good job pulling that medicine out. Now, real quickly, let's just quickly talk about a few things that are oftentimes confused or jumbled up with tinctures, because there is a difference, right? So one is a glycerite. And a glycerite is pretty much a tincture, we just did exactly this. We would do the exact same things as we did for our plantain here, except instead of using an 80 proof alcohol, you use a food grade vegetable glycerin. Okay, comes from Frontier. You can get it at health food stores, certainly the shop. Walgreens even has food grade vegetable glycerin. It's really sweet and viscous. It's thick. It's kind of like a clear or transparent honey. It's really good if you want a tincture and you like the idea of folk medicine making, but you don't want to use alcohol. You have an aversion, right? And that could be for any reason at all. It doesn't really matter what your reason is. You just don't want to use alcohol. Well, this is a sugar base, so it gives you an extended shelf life too, but not indefinite, about 18 to 24 months, which is pretty good, 2 years. And it does extract the medicinal properties out, but not to the extent that an alcohol does. This is a stronger, more potent solvent. But for children, it's really nice to make like a super easy, gentle rose petal glycerin, and it turns a really pretty light pink, and you can put it on like as a face lotion and take a few drops of it under your tongue, right? It's sweet. And little kids love it. And lots of times there is a medicinal property to it, but a lot of it is a placebo effect, right? Like a boo-boo medicine. And it just kind of breaks that cycle of them being upset or in a funk, and gives everybody something to do and get their mind off of it. And it gives the mom or the caregiver a medicine to give them without any worry, right? Glycerin. So if you use glycerin instead of alcohol, it's not a tincture. It's a glycerite or an extract. You'll also sometimes hear extracts. When we buy flavor extracts in the store, like lemon or cherry extract for baking, 9 times out of 10, they're carried in a glycerin or a glycerite. So you're really using like a folk medicine to flavor your breads. You probably didn't even realize it. So another thing that's easily used and confused with tinctures is apple cider vinegar. And apple cider vinegar and honey also make really great alternatives for tincture making. And if you use apple cider vinegar and honey instead of an 80 proof or higher alcohol or a glycerin, you've got an oxymel, O-X-Y-M-E-L. And that's just a folk medicine that harnesses the properties of vinegar and honey, right? Because they have in and of themselves their own medicinal properties and health benefits. And then infuses a botanical. This one is turmeric powder, and makes a really healthy drink. Now, all the rules apply. The clear glass during menstruum, bone dry, clean, sterilized, bottling in amber or cobalt glass when you're done. It's just a different solvent. And this is oftentimes called a fire cider. Right? So lots of times you might have seen a fire cider or heard about fire cider. The name got copyrighted, so we're not really allowed to call it that anymore. But that's what it would have been called about 10 years ago. And this is really good to make like a salad vinegar or just to your health. If you're somebody who already uses apple cider vinegar daily in water for like heartburn, because it's a really good remedy for that, why not add a little bit of ginger and turmeric and garlic to it and make a fire cider and an immune booster, right? And then this also could be used for any age or any condition and without the concern of alcohol. So if you use 80 proof or higher and you make your folk medicine, your botanical medicine in an alcohol, it's a tincture. If you use a vegetable glycerin, it's an extract or a glycerite. And if you use apple cider vinegar and honey, it's an oxymel or a fire cider, okay? So those are things that are very similar, but not quite the same. I just quickly want to show you guys a few things that we all have growing in our yards or are easy to get right now because we can't get out and shop. Echinacea, which is purple coneflower. You can use all parts of that plant. Some you can only use roots, right, or aerial or flower. This you can yank up the whole coneflower and dry it and cut and sift it from the beginning to the end. So if you tincture this, it makes an incredible sore throat drop. And you can do a few drops right down your throat during like itchy sinus time or a tonsillitis or just any sore throat after singing or talking all day. and you'll feel it tingle and numb, and it'll give you a numbing effect like a sucrets within seconds, literally. So Echinacea tinctures really well, the cone flowers. I already showed you once dandelion root, and you can also use the leaves and flowers as well. The root has the most potent medicine for like a liver tonic, and that's what we were making this for. Roses, and as long as you know they haven't been sprayed, right, and they're in your yard, roses make incredible tinctures. And then in white vinegars or glycerites, I think I said this about the glycerin already, they turn a really pretty pink hue, and they're just aesthetically pleasing to look at and see, and little kids really like them too. Lavender tinctures up great, and it's a great way to travel with it if you're having stress or anxiety, or night-night drops for adults. You could use the alcohol. If you were worried about it for a kid, you could infuse it into your vegetable glycerin and make a lavender tincture. And motherwort is a really great botanical. It doesn't grow a lot around here. You can find it, but it's a little trickier. But what I'm getting at with this is for patients, and it really works. It helps like irritability and just short-temperedness, hence the name motherwort or mother's helper. Mothers would drink cups of tea of it after long days, right? But it's bitter and it's hard to get down, and I like bitter things, and I can usually get most everything down, and it's a potent brew to suck. So if you have a botanical that you want the property from, yarrow is another one that's really good and medicinally beneficial, but really bitter and difficult to drink in a tea form. To tincture it is a way to still get the medicine, but just take a few drops right under your tongue or down your throat, or to a hot cup of tea or a glass of water, and you get those benefits without a really intense, unpleasant taste and drinking experience. So let's see. We talked about those are the main three things, and we talked about common things: echinacea coneflower, roses, lavender, dandelion root. Don't forget our plantain that we started with. Those plantain tinctures, you can put you can ingest them too for mineral content and calcium, but you can put those plantain tincture drops right on mosquito bites, bug bites, on drops of poison ivy, like in a poultice or a wash, and it'll take that sting, and it's a drawer. It'll pull that junk out to the surface and get it out of your body so you heal up quicker. And then some fun things that are terms that are kind of exciting to talk about, maybe we'll do this again another time, is an elixir. So an elixir is a magical or medicinal potion, and what makes it an elixir is when a stone, mineral, or crystal is infused to the drink, okay? So let's say we made a rose glycerite, and we let it infuse in our clear jar for a month, and then when it turned a pretty pink, and we kept it topped off, and then we used our hack, right, to filter out our botanical matter and then fill our amber glass jar, we could drop a rose quartz into it, because that would be the stone of unconditional love, and it would match too. It would be pink. So if we tried to glean inspiration from a stone, crystal, or mineral and infuse it into our folk medicine, that would make it an elixir. So if that is intriguing to you and you like the idea, make a tincture and add a safe crystal, mineral, or stone to it, and you've created an elixir. A tonic is a medicinal substance taken to give the feeling of vigor or well-being. So a tonic could be a tincture. It would just depend on what botanical you tincture. So an example of that would be ginseng. So ginseng is a tonic. It doesn't prescribe to a specific ailment. It's not like you take ginseng for a headache, like you would take willow bark for a headache, or you wouldn't take ginseng for menstrual cramps like you would take cramp bark or chaseberry for menstrual cramps. It's like daily vigor, health, and wellness. So you just kind of take it for overall vitality. So that would be a tonic. A potion is fictional, right? It's in a book. So an example is 3 witches made a love potion for the desperate king to give to his queen. So those are when you apply poisonous, magical, or healing properties to pretty much anything. So it's just kind of a fun word, but it's not really applicable to this. It's not really a real word, right? A concoction, and this is pretty common in folk medicine to end up with concoctions, is a curious mixture of many things. So it's when scientists or folk herbalists or just regular people like us mix many ingredients together, but rarely repeat the exact proportion or that same recipe again. So my example would be Mom made a concoction that was a casserole out of all the leftovers we had this week, right? So a concoction would be if you went out into your yard today and picked your lavender and your rose and your dandelion and you dried them to make them bone dry before you tinctured with them, right? And you put a pinch of dandelion and 2 pinches of rose petal and just a big old scoop of lavender in there, and then you got it going on. But you didn't record in it. You don't know exact amounts, and it could be that there was a little of this and a lot of that. That's a concoction. Now, a decoction, and this comes in really handy. If you're interested in tinctures, you would probably be interested in a decoction or an infusion. And that's a liquid preparation using heat, water, or liquor, resulting from concentrating the essence of a substance by heating or boiling, especially a medicinal plant or root. The herbalist boiled the dandelion root for an hour to make a decoction for the liver. So a decoction would just be this dandelion root and a big pot of boiling water, and you keep adding water to your decoctions too because it boils out, right? Just kind of like the evaporation process that we would experience in our tincture making. And you want to really get a strong brew, a strong steep, and make a really water-based tea. It wouldn't be it because that tea would be too weak, but a decoction, right? It'd be like if you made a cup of tea and let it sit there for hours and it was just really potent and concentrated. So things like dandelion root, echinacea, really everything that we discussed today easily make decoctions. Those are just water-based, highly concentrated, with very short shelf lives, right? They only last maybe about a week. And then again, an oxymil is an infusion of an apple cider vinegar and honey, sometimes a little water. I don't make them with water, but you'll see other recipes that add a little bit of water. And this is a great way to harness herbal properties along with the healing qualities of honey and vinegar. So some fun recipes that I like that all tincture well. And if you ever want a glycerite or oxymil, any of these instead, it applies. Just keep in mind that the benefit of a tincture is extended to indefinite shelf life, and that 80 proof or higher alcohol is such a strong solvent that if there's any medicine in those botanicals, it's sure to pull it out, right? So let's see, we've got, ginkgo biloba leaf for a memory booster. You can tincture that, and that's just like before a test or you're getting ready to do some public speaking and you just want to be sharp and on it, right? You ready for anything? That's a good one. A tummy tonic. This is really good for little kids or people who just have tight stomachs or during pregnancy after the first trimester. Ginger root, spearmint, and cinnamon, that combination, and most of us have those right in our cabinet. Hibiscus, those big pretty red flowers, and red raspberry leaf. That's a great infusion for reproduction and toning. A calendula, it's called pot marigold or calendula, however you say it. It's got a lot of soothing antimicrobial properties. It's super easy to grow and really pretty, bright yellow petals. That makes an incredible tincture. And then things that aren't quite as easy to find but work really well would be valerian root. That's a nerve tonic. That tinctures really well for stress and anxiety. And that's where the pharmaceutical Valium comes from, VAL, from valerian. It's extracted. So the source is pretty potent, right? Chamomile is a really good one. Red raspberry leaf or blackberry leaf, those have high tannins. They're really good to help with calcium intake and diarrhea or loose bowels. I bet if you have a raspberry or blackberry bush growing, you can just pick that. Peppermint, cayenne pepper, those are all things that lots of us have around that really tincture up well and give you an instant gratification from folk medicine. And oh yes, I can show you some examples of each. Sure thing. So here's our example of the plantain tincture we just made, right? Here's kind of what happened. Here's an example of the fire cider or the oxymeal. Here's an elderflower right before we had to close up, and it's been really steeping and strong. And I actually need to bottle this today, so I wanted to show you. So let me quick. That was a little dry. Here we go. So you heard that pop too. Did you hear it? So it creates a seal. We kept that topped off. See how nice and full that is, and see how the evaporation was just starting to expose that botanical matter. So we got it in the nick of time. Again, this is an elderflower tincture. I'm going to grab one more pipette in this and show you one more time how we pull it out. And remember my hack, because to be a purist or to follow folk tradition, the botanicals are freely allowed to mix. So if you don't want to spend all day straining, do this. So here's your elderflower, and this would be an adaptogen or a tonic. You would take it just for daily vigor and health to help with adapting to changing germs and climate. Elderberries are very popular. Elderberry syrup, I bet we've all had it before. This is just the flower before it goes to berry. And the elderflowers have a lot of medicinal properties, strong antiviral and antimicrobial. So there's our elderflower. Something to mention is if you do an oxymeal in a jar like this and you use a vinegar base instead of an alcohol or a glycerin, you want to take some parchment paper or wax paper and coat the lid, make a barrier, because that vinegar will start to break down your metal and make it rusty, and it just looks kind of funky and weird. But if you use alcohol or glycerin, that eliminates the problem. And so elderflower tincture, and I'll finish bottling it today. Now, would I store it in clear glass? Absolutely not. What I would store it in amber, right? Because we use clear glass during the making, but once the making's done, we want an indefinite to extended shelf life, so we're going to use a nice amber bottle. Here's a tincture we made a long time ago that we bottled and we sell. It's a Valerian Vanilla. You can still see the vanilla bean in there. We left it because it kind of, valerian's a really hard, kind of stinky, bitter, weird tasting root. Even in a tincture, it can kind of give you bad breath or leave you with a weird flavor. So we paired it with vanilla to take the edge and the smell off, and it does really well. We call it VMV. And then for our elderflower, that we use Tito's for this because this was an order for people with gluten sensitivity. You would just take a few drops under the tongue, and then there you have it. And you can certainly add this to your cup of tea or your water or your juice or whatever you want. But the idea is to take it directly and to ingest it and use it as medicine. Now, does anybody have any, hi, Sean. Does anybody have any questions, or did you want me to touch on the drying technique, since so much of this is in our backyard? You guys can pick today and medicine make in 3 or 4 days. Yeah, maybe. I'll talk about it anyway. So what you want to do, again, and I can't stress this enough, is use bone dry botanical, because then you don't have to worry about anything. It eliminates any concern about an unstable shelf product or a contaminant. So when you go and pick your own stuff, you want to rinse it real quick with just a little bit of water. And if you feel like it's been really germy, or is by like your pet's walk or something, you can rinse it with a little bit of white vinegar, spray it off. And then you just want to kind of strip it of all its dirt and stuff and spread it out nice and flat on a piece of wax paper or a cookie tin. And now this is if you want to get it dried right away. And I would do it just like this. And then you can do two things. You can put it in your oven at its lowest setting. It's usually, it went out. It's usually 170 degrees, thank you, is your lowest setting, right? And you leave it in there about 4 to 6 hours. And you want it so when the leaves start to curl up and in, you can tell that they're getting dry and brittle. And you want to do it until your stems snap. So you see how this is still really wet and juicy and just bends and has flexibility. You want to dry that in your oven at 170 until you take this out and it snaps like a twig. Another really cool way to do it while you sleep, and it really works, is to lay these out on parchment or wax paper on a cookie sheet, again, baking sheet, and put them in your oven before you go to bed, but just leave your oven light on. Just the light that you would like keep on when you were checking a cake to see if it's rising or if your pie's browning up or whatever. And then you leave that on overnight. And generally 1 night is enough to dry it. It does really work. Then if you're not in such a hurry to use your oven, the light bulb technique overnight, or the 170 for about 4 hours until your branches, or your stems snap like a twig, like a dry twig. You can also just gather your harvest up, and this is really nice to do with things like roses and lavender because they're so beautiful. And then just bundle them in twine or rubber band and hang them upside down to air dry. This usually takes about 3 or 4 weeks. I like this technique, but in my house, I feel like I'm afraid it's going to get dusty or pick up pet hair. So if you did that, the way I like to do it when I air dry is to wrap it in like a brown paper bag from the grocery store. And even though it doesn't look as pretty as just the botanical hanging like from your ceiling or whatever, it's a lot more practical, and then you can use it and not worry about any like house dust or anything picking up on it. And that's about 3 to 4 weeks. And then my husband, who's right here helping me, he's my tech guy while I get the hang of this virtual stuff. He and my son or daughter bought a dehydrator at Aldi's. Yeah. And what was it, 15, 20 bucks? Yeah. 15, 20 bucks. So not that we don't all need another kitchen appliance, but they're easy to find if you really get hooked on this, or you have an incredible harvest of your garden or just really good weeds in your yard, and you want to make a big batch of tinctures up that store or give away or sell or whatever. The dehydrator would probably be worth it. We plug it in. We dehydrated some plantain, the plantain we saw, we dehydrated in that. And didn't it take just about overnight? Yeah. Yeah. So about overnight, maybe 14 hours. And again, I'm a proponent of bone dry. I know I've said it a lot, but it's super important. And as long as you have a bone dry botanical and you're using a safe botanical, right? Not anything that's could have an adverse side effect or potentially poisonous, you're good to go. That's one reason why I really like rose and lavender and echinacea, because those are pretty easy to find and calm and body-loving herbs and botanicals that rarely would interact or cause trouble with somebody who might be on another medicine or just be super sensitive to things like that. And remember, tincture making is good too for like yarrow and motherwort and other things that you want to get the medicinal property from, but it's just too bitter and sour to choke down a whole cup of tea. You can tincture it and get your benefits from it without having to try to drink something that's not palatable. Here's an Echinacea tincture we made and we sell. We sell half-ounce bottles for $5, which is a super reasonable price, but to give you an idea of retail. And then I just store it in this jar. We keep them wiped down. And then when somebody comes in for an Echinacea tincture, I use a clean pipette and fill it just the way I showed you guys, right? And remember, Echinacea is your cone flower. And if you make it right, and I know that you will, when you use this for a sore throat, it numbs and gives you pain relief just like a Sucrets would do. So that's kind of a fun thing to know. And does anybody else have any questions or anything they would want me to talk about or say? I'd like to do another whole class on flower essences, but that's a whole other class. Those are really fun too. Does this look good?
Yeah. I think they're still listening.
Still listening? Thanks for doing this. Thanks, Emily.
All right. If we don't have any other questions, we can go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much, Carissa. You're very knowledgeable in what you do.
I can just keep talking.
Yeah, you probably
the Box by Flower Rescue Remedy is a really common homeopathic or homeopathy, however you want to say it, remedy that we've sold out of under the current circumstances and that I see in a lot of health food stores.
Yeah.
That's a tincture, but it's of 5 flowers, right, that are known for like emotional support and trauma recovery. And they bottle theirs in a high-end brandy and use a 5-flower blend and sell ounce bottles of it. We buy it wholesale from them for like $20 is retail all day long. And it is a really good product. So not to poo-poo it. I got my little 11-year-old, the glycerin version, just when he was feeling stressed or whatever. He's got it by his bed and he can just take a little drop and it's sweet and harmless and feels like you're doing something.
Right. Well, thank you, Carissa.
A flower essence is just when you pick a live flower that's grown in your yard or your garden that's beautiful and you let it sit in a super clean, crystal clear bowl out in the sun all day and super clean food grade spring water. And you basically just pick up the essence or the vibration of the plant and then you just strain the water and drink the water. That would all happen in a window, like a 1 hour, or I mean a 1 day window or 12 hours because you wouldn't want your water, right, to sit out or potentially get weird. But flower essences are really fun and they're fun to do with little kids and they look pretty and no, there's absolutely no harm in them at all.
Right. Well, if you guys are interested in us having Carissa do flower essences, go ahead and comment.
We can't see you guys, so I don't know what you can see, but I hope it's good.
If you have any more questions for Carissa, you can comment on here, or you can always find her at 7.
So tincture making, you just need a bone dry botanical that you know is safe, 110% plant identification, right? You need a clear glass jar that's squeaky clean and bone dry. You need a bone dry botanical, an 80 proof alcohol, just a simple kitchen tool. If you don't have a mortar and pestle, it's okay. And a month. Then you just need a month. And then I guess the only other thing you need at the very end is an amber, cobalt, any sort of glass that would filter out sun to give you your shelf life. But I love tincture making, and it's true folk medicine, and we can all do it, and it really works.
All right, we're about to wrap it up. If you have any questions, please go ahead and comment. And otherwise, thank you so much, Carissa.
Is this where I would write?
Yeah, you can type right down in
Type
there.
down here. I'm